Big muscular groom shows up unannounced and is betrayed by the bride on their wedding day. 0015 hook. He was built like a fortress. 6'5", 250 pounds of muscle. A man who could protect anyone. But on the morning of his own wedding, when he walked through those chapel doors unannounced after vanishing for 3 weeks, the woman in the white dress didn't run into his arms. She screamed, not in joy, in terror. And what came next would expose a betrayal so twisted, so carefully hidden, that everyone in that room would question if they ever knew her at all. 01510 backstory. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. This is the story of Ethan Graves and Lila Hart. To understand what happened in that chapel, you need to know who they were before everything fell apart. Ethan Graves wasn't just any groom. He was a former Marine, honorably discharged after 8 years of service. He returned to his hometown in rural Colorado with a quiet determination to live simply. He bought a small cabin on the edge of town, spent his mornings hiking the mountain trails, and his afternoons helping neighbors fix fences, chop wood, and rebuild old barns. People in town loved him. He was the kind of man who remembered your name, who showed up when you needed help without being asked. He didn't talk much about his past, but his actions spoke louder than words ever could. Ethan was known for his discipline, his loyalty, and his calm presence in any storm. He worked part-time at a local outdoor gear shop and spent his weekends volunteering with a veterans support group. He seemed at peace, content, like a man who had finally found his place in the world. Then he met Lila Hart at the farmer's market on a Saturday morning in early spring. She was selling homemade candles and baked goods, laughing with customers, her smile lighting up the entire booth. Ethan was drawn to her immediately. Not just because she was beautiful, though she was. It was the warmth she radiated, the way she made everyone around her feel seen. He bought a loaf of bread he didn't need just to talk to her. They started dating within a week. Lila was a school counselor at the local elementary school. She was beloved by parents and adored by kids. She had a gentle way of speaking, a knack for making people feel safe enough to open up. She grew up in the same town, the daughter of a retired pastor and a nurse. She was known as the girl who always did the right thing, the one who volunteered at church, who organized fundraisers, who never missed a birthday. On the surface, she was perfect. Everyone said so. Their relationship moved fast. Ethan wasn't the type to play games, and Lila seemed equally certain. Within 3 months, they were inseparable. Within 6, Ethan proposed on a snowy mountain overlook just outside town. He got down on one knee as the sun set behind the peaks, and Lila said yes through happy tears. The engagement was celebrated by everyone who knew them. It felt like a fairy tale. A man who had seen the worst of the world finding peace with a woman who embodied kindness. They planned a simple wedding, nothing extravagant. Just close friends and family in the small chapel where Lila's father used to preach. Rustic decorations, wildflowers, a reception in the community hall. It was supposed to be intimate and meaningful. But as the wedding date approached, something shifted. Ethan started becoming distant. He'd stare off into space during dinner. He'd check his phone constantly, then put it down without explanation. Lila noticed. She asked him if something was wrong. He'd smile and say he was fine, just working through some old memories. She didn't push, but the distance grew. Then one night, 2 weeks before the wedding, Ethan received a phone call. It was late, nearly midnight. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, and he grabbed it quickly, as if he'd been expecting it. Lila stirred beside him. She watched through half-closed eyes as Ethan stepped out of the bedroom and walked outside onto the porch. She couldn't hear what he was saying, but she could see his silhouette through the window. His shoulders were tense. His voice was low. He paced back and forth for nearly 20 minutes. When he came back inside, Lila pretended to be asleep. He didn't say a word. The next morning, Ethan was gone. No note, no text. His truck was still in the driveway. His wallet and phone were on the kitchen counter. It was as if he had simply walked out the door and vanished into thin air. 10:20. the disappearance, and the wedding day. For 3 weeks, no one knew where Ethan Graves was. Lila reported him missing the same day. The police searched the woods, the trails, the nearby towns. They questioned his friends, his co-workers, his family. Nothing. No signs of struggle. No evidence of foul play. No digital footprint. It was as if he had been erased. Lila played the role of the devastated fiancé perfectly. She posted tearful pleas on social media. She organized search parties. She gave interviews to the local news. Everyone rallied around her. But as the days passed, the wedding date loomed closer. People started whispering. Should she cancel it? Was Ethan coming back? What if something terrible had happened? Lila insisted they keep the date. She told friends and family that Ethan would want them to gather, to hold space for hope. She said she believed he would return. Some thought it was brave. Others thought it was strange. On the morning of the wedding, the chapel was filled with uncertainty. Guests arrived in their Sunday best, but the mood was heavy. Whispers filled the aisles. Has anyone heard anything? Is the groom really missing? What is she thinking? The bride was in the back room getting ready. Her hands trembled as she applied her makeup. The maid of honor, her childhood best friend named Rachel, kept glancing at her with concern. Lila kept excusing herself. She'd step into the hallway, check her phone, then return with a strained smile. Rachel finally asked, Lila, are you okay? Do you want to call this off? Lila shook her head. No, we're doing this. Rachel didn't understand, but she didn't push. The ceremony was supposed to start at 11. By 10:45, the pastor was pacing nervously at the altar. Guests were seated, uncomfortable and confused. Some were crying. Others were angry. Why are we here if there's no groom? This feels wrong. Then, at exactly 11 o'clock, the chapel doors burst open. Every head turned, and there he was, Ethan Graves, alive, standing in the doorway, silhouetted by the morning sun. He looked like he'd been through hell. His face was gaunt. His clothes were dirty and torn. His hair was matted. There were bruises on his arms and a cut above his eyebrow. He was barefoot, but he was there. The chapel erupted. Gasps. Cries. Someone screamed. Ethan didn't say a word. He just walked slowly down the aisle, his eyes locked on Lila. And Lila, standing at the front in her white dress, went pale. She took a step back. Her hands flew to her mouth. And then she screamed. Why are you here? You weren't supposed to. She stopped herself, but it was too late. The room went silent. Everyone heard it. Rachel grabbed Lila's arm. Lila, what did you do? Ethan stopped walking. He stared at her, confused, hurt, betrayed. A man in the back row stood up suddenly. He was tall, thin, with dark hair and a panicked expression. His name was Marcus Hale. He worked with Lila at the school, and the moment he stood, everyone turned to look at him. Marcus went pale. He looked at Lila. She looked at him. And in that moment, the truth began to unravel. 2035-0 the investigation. The police were called immediately. Guests were asked to remain in the chapel while officers arrived. Ethan collapsed into a pew, dehydrated and exhausted. Paramedics were called. Lila refused to go near him. She sat in the corner of the room, trembling. Her wedding dress crumpled around her. Rachel stayed by her side, but even she was starting to look at Lila differently. Marcus tried to leave. An off-duty officer who was a guest stopped him at the door. You're not going anywhere. Within an hour, detectives arrived. They separated Ethan, Lila, and Marcus into different rooms for questioning. Ethan's story came first. He was taken to the hospital, rehydrated, and examined. Once he was stable, he gave his statement. He said the last thing he remembered before waking up in the cabin was having drinks with a few friends 2 nights before the wedding. It was supposed to be a low-key bachelor celebration, just a few guys at a bar. He remembered feeling dizzy, nauseous. He thought maybe he'd had too much to drink, but he only had 2 beers. One of his friends offered to drive him home. Ethan accepted. But he didn't remember getting into the car. He didn't remember the drive. The next thing he knew, he woke up in a dark, cold room. It was a cabin, abandoned. No electricity, no running water. The windows were boarded up. The door was locked from the outside. He had no phone, no wallet, no shoes. There was a jug of water and a few protein bars on the floor beside him. And there was something else. A photograph, printed on glossy paper. It was a picture of Lila. She was laughing, her head tilted back, her hand resting on someone's shoulder. But it wasn't Ethan's shoulder. The photo had been cropped, but you could see part of a man's arm around her waist. Ethan didn't recognize the man, but the message was clear. She's not who you think she is. He spent days trying to break out. He pounded on the door until his fists bled. He tried to pry the boards off the windows, but they were nailed too tightly. He rationed the water and food, not knowing how long he'd be there. On the third day, he heard a car pull up outside. He screamed for help. The car drove away. On the seventh day, the door unlocked. He didn't see who did it. By the time he stumbled outside, weak and disoriented, the car was gone. He started walking. He didn't know where he was. It took him days to find a road. He hitched a ride from a truck driver who thought he was a homeless veteran. The driver dropped him off at the edge of town. Ethan went straight to the chapel. He didn't know what else to do. Now, sitting in the hospital, he asked the detective one question. Why would someone do this to me? The detective didn't have an answer yet, but they were starting to form a theory. 35-0, 50-0. The truth unravels. Lila's statement was different. She sat in the small chapel office, still in her wedding dress, mascara streaked down her face. She told the detective that Ethan had been pulling away for weeks. She said he'd been acting strange, secretive, distant. She said she thought he was having doubts about the wedding. Then, the night he disappeared, she said he sent her a text message. The detective asked to see it. Lila pulled out her phone and showed them. The message read, "I can't do this. I'm sorry. I need time. Don't look for me." The timestamp was from the night Ethan vanished. The detective asked if she'd tried calling him. She said yes, but his phone went straight to voicemail. She said she was devastated, but tried to hold out hope. She said she kept the wedding date because she thought maybe, just maybe, he'd come back. When asked about Marcus Hale, Lila hesitated. She said he was a co-worker, a friend, nothing more. The detective pressed. Why did he stand up when Ethan walked in? Lila didn't answer. Marcus, meanwhile, was in another room, sweating through his shirt. He was interrogated for less than an hour before he broke. He admitted everything. Marcus Hale and Lila Hart had been involved. Not physically, he insisted, but emotionally. They'd been talking for months, late-night conversations, shared secrets. He said he'd fallen in love with her. He said Lila had confided in him, that she felt trapped, that Ethan was intense, that she wanted out but didn't know how to end it without looking like the villain. Marcus said Lila had asked him for help. She wanted Ethan to disappear for a while, just long enough for the wedding to be called off, just long enough for her to move on without the shame of being the one who left. Marcus admitted he'd drugged Ethan's drink at the bar. He admitted he'd driven him to the cabin. He admitted he'd locked him inside, but he swore he never meant to hurt him. He said he left food and water. He said he unlocked the door after a week. He thought Ethan would just go home and realize the wedding was off. He didn't think Ethan would come to the chapel. When the detective asked if Lila knew about the cabin, Marcus hesitated. Then he said yes. He said she knew. He said she'd helped him plan it. The detective brought this information to Lila. She denied it. She said Marcus was lying. She said he was obsessed with her and had acted alone. The case was falling apart into he said, she said territory, until forensics came back. Fingerprints found inside the cabin matched Marcus Hale, but they also found something else. A handwritten note, left beside the photograph of Lila. The handwriting was analyzed. It wasn't Marcus's handwriting, it was Lila's. The note read, "He needs to see who you really are." 50-0. 58-0. The final confrontation. The case went to trial 6 months later. The courtroom was packed. Ethan sat on one side with his family. Lila sat on the other with hers. Marcus was charged with kidnapping and assault. Lila was charged as an accessory. Both pled not guilty. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Marcus's defense argued he'd acted out of love and manipulation, that Lila had convinced him Ethan was dangerous. that he thought he was protecting her. Lila's defense argued she'd been manipulated by Marcus, that she had no knowledge of the cabin, that the note was forged. The jury heard testimony from friends, family, co-workers. They heard Ethan describe waking up alone and terrified. They heard Lila describe her fear and confusion. On the final day, Ethan took the stand one last time. The prosecutor asked him if he still loved Lila. Ethan looked at her across the courtroom. He said, "I loved who I thought she was. But I don't know if that person ever existed." Lila broke down. She asked to speak. Against her lawyer's advice, she took the stand. She admitted the affair. She admitted she'd wanted out. She admitted she'd written the note. But she swore she never told Marcus to kidnap Ethan. She said Marcus had acted on his own. She said the text message she received the morning of the wedding, the one that said, "He won't be coming, it's done," had been sent from her own phone. She said Marcus must have taken it. She said she didn't know Ethan was in danger until he walked into that chapel. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Marcus Hale was found guilty of kidnapping. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Lila Hart was found guilty of conspiracy and obstruction. She was sentenced to 4 years. Ethan Graves walked out of that courtroom a free man. But freedom didn't feel like victory. 58-0, 1 hour's closing. So let me ask you this. Do you think Lila knew exactly what Marcus was going to do? Or was she a victim of her own lies, caught in a trap she helped build but couldn't control? And what about Ethan? If you were him, could you ever trust anyone again? Could you ever forgive? Or would you spend the rest of your life wondering who people really are behind the smiles they show you? This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about the masks we wear, the lies we tell ourselves, and the moment when the truth walks through the door unannounced and everything we thought we knew shatters. If this story made you feel something, if it made you think twice about trust and truth, then share it, talk about it, and stay with us. Because the next story we're bringing you is about a man who attended his own funeral and discovered his family had been waiting for him to die. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a story that reminds you the truth is always stranger and darker than fiction.